There's something incredibly powerful about a woman who chooses to heal instead of hate, who decides to grow instead of grieve, and who leads with grace instead of bitterness. You see, leadership born out of pain isn't weak. It's wisdom dressed in compassion. She once walked through the valleys of heartbreak, rejection, and disappointment. But she didn't stay there. She took every wound and turned it into wisdom. She took every scar and turned it into strength. Because healing isn't about forgetting what broke you. It's about remembering without bitterness. When a woman heals, she doesn't just rise for herself. She rises for every soul still crawling through the darkness she once knew. Her leadership isn't loud or forceful, it's steady, patient, and kind. She doesn't lead to prove herself. She leads to lift others. The world doesn't need more perfect leaders. It needs more healed ones. People who have been through the fire and emerged softer, not harder. Leaders who understand that true power doesn't come from position, but from peace. She learned that forgiveness is the bridge between pain and power. That silence sometimes speaks louder than anger. That love, when it's rooted in healing, can rebuild entire communities. And so she leads not from her wounds, but from her wisdom. Not from her pain, but from her peace. Because the healed woman is the most unstoppable force on earth. She doesn't chase validation, she cultivates transformation. Remember this: healing isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of your purpose. She didn't just survive, she evolved. And in doing so, she became the light that others now follow. Healing is not an event. It's a sacred journey of reclaiming yourself piece by piece. When life wounds you, through betrayal, loss, disappointment, or rejection, the pain can consume your thoughts, define your choices, and shadow your confidence. But healing doesn't mean erasing the past or pretending that pain never happened. It means learning to look at the scar and say, "This hurt me, but didn't destroy me." It's the process of taking your deepest suffering and transforming it into your greatest strength. When a woman decides to heal, she stops running from her pain and starts listening to it. Pain, when faced with courage, becomes a teacher. It reveals what truly matters, what needs to change, and where real peace begins. The journey is not easy. It asks you to revisit moments you'd rather forget, to face the emotions you've buried, and to forgive those who may never apologize. But every tear, every silent night, every prayer for peace brings you one step closer to freedom. True healing is not about pretending to be okay. It's about becoming honest with yourself. It's realizing that strength isn't in suppressing emotions, but in understanding them. The woman who heals learns that peace doesn't come from changing her past. It comes from changing her relationship with it. She no longer asks, "Why did this happen to me?" But instead, "What can this teach me?" That shift in mindset turns her from a victim of pain into a student of growth. And through that growth, pain begins to lose its power. The memories still exist, But they no longer control her mood, her reactions, or her worth. What once broke her now builds her. The same pain that once silenced her becomes the story that inspires others. Because healing is not selfish, it's service. Every time you heal a part of yourself, you create light for someone still trapped in their own darkness. You become proof that it's possible to rise again. The transformation from pain to purpose doesn't happen overnight. It's quiet, often invisible. It happens in the moments when she chooses to forgive instead of fight, when she decides to rest instead of run, when she begins to speak kindly to herself again. Over time, she realizes that her wounds were not signs of weakness, but invitations to wisdom. They taught her empathy, patience, and depth, qualities that can't be learned through comfort. Eventually, her story changes. What was once a story of survival becomes a story of strength. She stops hiding her past because it no longer defines her. It refines her. Her healing becomes her leadership. Her scars become her testimony. She becomes someone who leads not because she has all the answers, but because she has walked through the questions and found peace in the process. Healing, then, is freedom, not from memory, but from the control that pain once had. It's the moment she realizes that she can carry her past without being carried by it. That's when transformation happens. That's when she no longer just exists. She lives fully, freely, and fearlessly. Because she healed, and through that healing, she discovered her true purpose: to help others find theirs. Leadership is not simply about guiding others, it's about understanding them. And understanding comes from experience, from walking through the fires of pain and emerging not bitter, but better. A person who leads from a healed heart carries a calm strength, one that doesn't need to control others, but inspires them. When the heart has been broken and then rebuilt, it develops a kind of wisdom that can't be taught in classrooms. It's earned through tears, silence, and self-reflection. A hurting heart often reacts. It's driven by emotion, by the need to prove, by the urge to be seen. But a healed heart responds. It's guided by peace, by patience, by a quiet confidence that doesn't seek attention. When someone leads from a place of pain, their decisions are clouded by their wounds. They may project their fears, guard themselves too tightly, or lead through pride rather than purpose. But when that same person takes the time to heal, to understand where that pain came from and what it taught them, they transform into a leader who leads with empathy rather than ego. Healing allows clarity. It helps a person see beyond themselves and recognize the struggles in others. A healed heart doesn't need to be right all the time. It wants to do what's right. It doesn't seek to dominate, but to develop. The leader who has healed becomes a safe space for others because they no longer carry resentment, jealousy, or insecurity. They know what it feels like to fall apart, and that awareness makes them gentle with others who are still in the process of finding their strength. When a woman heals, her leadership style changes. She no longer leads to prove her worth, but to serve her purpose. Her presence brings stability. Her voice carries weight not because it's loud, but because it's authentic. People follow her not out of fear, but out of respect. They can sense that she understands them, not through sympathy, but through shared humanity. She doesn't need to remind others of her pain. Her peace speaks louder. Wisdom is born from wounds we choose to understand, not escape. Every painful experience holds a lesson, but only when we pause long enough to learn it. Healing gives perspective. It teaches that failure isn't final, rejection isn't the end, and loss isn't punishment. Instead, each becomes a pathway to deeper understanding. A healed heart recognizes that life is not about avoiding pain, but about learning to carry it gracefully. And in that grace lies the ability to lead others through their storms. Those who lead from healed hearts carry light. They know that power is not in control, but in compassion. They listen more, judge less, and guide with humility. Their wisdom becomes contagious, not through words, but through example. They show that true leadership is not about perfection, but progression. It's about walking with others, not above them. So when a heart heals, it becomes a compass, one that points not toward pride, but toward peace. It teaches that leadership doesn't begin when you're strong. It begins when you've faced your weakness and learned from it. Because the world doesn't need more powerful leaders, it needs more healed ones, hearts that have been broken, mended, and now shine as beacons of hope for everyone still finding their way. Forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. It is one of the greatest expressions of strength. It takes far more courage to let go of bitterness than to hold on to blame. Many people believe that leadership is about control, decision making, and vision. And while all of that is true, the deepest kind of leadership begins with the heart. A person who learns to forgive becomes a leader who sets others free, not through power, but through peace. When you forgive, you release yourself from the chains of resentment that keep you tied to the past. Anger is heavy. It drains energy, clarity, and creativity. A heart filled with bitterness cannot see clearly, cannot lead wisely, and cannot love freely. Forgiveness doesn't excuse what someone did. It simply means you are no longer allowing their actions to dictate your emotions. It's not about forgetting. It's about choosing freedom over fury. The act of forgiveness transforms you first. It changes how you see others and, more importantly, how you see yourself. When a woman chooses to forgive, she's not saying that the pain didn't matter. She's saying that it mattered so much, she refuses to let it define her. That choice brings lightness to her spirit, clarity to her mind, and softness to her tone. And these are the very qualities that make her an extraordinary leader. She becomes approachable, understanding, and calm because she's no longer fighting invisible battles within herself. Forgiveness breaks the cycle of anger that often poisons relationships, families, and workplaces. When one person chooses peace over pride, the energy shifts. Forgiveness disarms hostility. It creates room for healing conversations, reconciliation, and renewed trust. A forgiving leader doesn't hold grudges or keep score. They don't use people's past mistakes as weapons. Instead, they help others grow from them. That kind of environment fosters loyalty, love, and long-lasting respect. But forgiveness doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, sometimes slow, sometimes painful. It asks you to confront your hurt, to sit with your anger, and to make peace with your disappointment. It's not about pretending that everything is fine. It's about acknowledging that the past cannot be changed, but your response to it can. Forgiveness requires emotional maturity. It demands that you rise above your pain and see the bigger picture, the purpose behind the experience. When you forgive, you step into leadership with authenticity. You no longer lead out of reaction, you lead out of reflection. People can sense your peace, they feel your steadiness. You become the kind of leader who can calm storms simply by being present. Your decisions are no longer influenced by ego or revenge, but guided by wisdom and compassion. You inspire others not just through what you achieve, but through who you've become. A healed and forgiving heart teaches others how to live lighter. It becomes a mirror showing others that peace is possible, even after betrayal, disappointment, or heartbreak. And that's true leadership, not demanding change from others, but becoming the change that inspires it. Forgiveness may not change what happened, but it changes you. And when you change, you lead differently, love deeply, and live freely. Because the greatest act of leadership is not commanding others, it's conquering yourself. And forgiveness is the victory that makes that possible. The truest form of leadership doesn't come from titles, ranks, or positions. It comes from the heart. Leadership that is rooted in empathy has a power that no amount of authority can match. People may obey authority, but they follow empathy. They listen not because they are told to, but because they feel understood. When someone leads from a place of empathy, they connect beyond rules and reach into the human experience that binds us all. Empathy begins when we stop seeing people as roles, employees, followers, or subordinates, and start seeing them as human beings with fears, dreams, and struggles. It is the ability to step into another's shoes, to understand their perspective without judgment. A leader who has experienced pain, failure, or loss develops a deeper sensitivity to what others go through. Their own healing journey teaches them patience. They no longer rush to criticize. Instead, they listen to understand. They know that behind every mistake lies a story, and behind every silence lies a struggle. Authority might give you control, but empathy gives you connection. A leader who commands through authority often creates compliance. But a leader who leads with empathy creates commitment. People will work for authority, but they will grow with empathy. When someone feels truly seen and valued, they begin to flourish. A healed leader understands that because they know what it feels like to be broken, unseen, or misunderstood. Their compassion becomes a bridge between hearts, a light that guides others gently forward. Empathy doesn't mean being soft or avoiding hard truths. It means communicating truth with kindness, setting boundaries with respect, and guiding others with both firmness and warmth. The healed leader doesn't use their power to intimidate, but to elevate. They can correct without crushing, advise without condemning, and inspire without imposing. Their calmness creates safety, their understanding creates trust. And trust, not fear, is what keeps people loyal. In moments of challenge, people don't look for perfect leaders, they look for present ones. Those who can stand with them, not just above them. Empathetic leadership is about walking beside others, not pulling them from ahead. It's about saying, I may not have all the answers, but I will walk this path with you. That sense of togetherness transforms teams into families, workplaces into communities, and missions into movements. Empathy is born from healing. When a person has faced their own darkness, they no longer judge the darkness in others. They learn to respond with patience, to offer kindness even when it's undeserved. They understand that everyone is fighting battles unseen. That understanding makes them powerful, not in dominance, but in influence. People don't just remember what such a leader did, they remember how that leader made them feel. And perhaps that's the greatest secret of leadership. People will forget your strategies, your speeches, your rules, but they will never forget your empathy. The healed leader becomes a living reminder that strength and softness can coexist. Their compassion becomes contagious, inspiring others to lead the same way. In the end, true leadership is not about standing above others, it's about kneeling beside them, understanding their pain and lifting them higher. Empathy turns leadership into legacy, and a healed heart into a guiding light for every soul that follows. Strength is often misunderstood. Many believe it means being untouched by pain, never falling apart, or never showing weakness. But true strength is born not in perfection. It's forged in the fire of imperfection, in the quiet rebuilding that happens after everything seems lost. Real strength comes from the breaking, from the moments when you thought you wouldn't make it, yet somehow you did. It's the courage to stand up after you've fallen, to rebuild after you've been shattered, and to smile after you've cried. When life breaks you, it doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. It strips away the false layers of pride, ego, and illusion and shows you what truly matters. You discover that your value doesn't depend on what you have, but on what you hold inside. Your spirit, your resilience, your faith. The process of being broken is painful because it forces you to confront parts of yourself you've ignored. But in that confrontation lies transformation. You realize that your cracks don't make you less. They make you more human, more relatable, more real. The strongest people are not those who have never known defeat or disappointment, but those who faced it and found a way to rise again. Every time you rebuild yourself, you grow wiser, softer, stronger. You learn to trust yourself more deeply. You begin to understand that every challenge was not meant to punish you, but to prepare you. The breaking was not the end. It was the beginning of a new version of you, one that is deeper, calmer, and more grounded. There is beauty in rebuilding because it's an act of creation. You are shaping yourself with awareness, choosing what to keep and what to let go. The woman who has been broken and rebuilt walks differently. She carries grace in her pain and humility in her power. She doesn't hide her scars, she honors them. They are proof of her survival, symbols of her strength. She knows now that the cracks let the light in, that her wounds have become windows through which wisdom shines. Rebuilding is never easy. It requires patience, faith, and persistence. There are days when it feels like progress is invisible, when hope flickers faintly. But the magic of rebuilding lies in the slow, unseen changes, in the strength growing silently beneath the surface, like a seed buried underground. The growth may be hidden, but it's happening. Every small act of courage, every moment of self-kindness, every tear wiped away in silence adds to your strength. And then, one day, you realize that the person you've become is not the same as before. You're not the same woman who broke. You're stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. You no longer fear the breaking because you've learned how to rebuild. You've discovered that strength is not the absence of struggle. It's the ability to transform struggle into power. True strength isn't loud. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "I'm still here." It's found in resilience, in faith, and in the quiet decision to try again. Every time life breaks you, it gives you the chance to rebuild yourself with more grace, more purpose, and more authenticity. And in that rebuilding, you discover a truth that changes everything, that your greatest strength was never in being unbroken, but in your beautiful ability to begin again. Healing is not a straight road. It twists, turns, pauses, and sometimes even circles back before it moves forward again. It's not a quick fix. It's a slow awakening. And it's through that very slowness that the soul learns patience, a virtue that transforms how we live, love, and lead. When someone embarks on the journey of healing, they quickly realize that rushing through pain doesn't make it disappear. Time doesn't heal by itself, understanding does. And understanding requires patience. Patience teaches acceptance, the art of being okay with not being okay yet. It reminds you that growth is not always visible, just like a seed buried in the soil. Transformation often happens beneath the surface, where no one can see it. The person who is healing must learn to sit in the silence, to trust that even when life feels still, progress is being made. Patience teaches that strength is not in speed, but in endurance, in showing up each day with faith that something beautiful is unfolding, even when it's unseen. Alongside patience comes humility, a quiet teacher that reshapes the heart. When life breaks you, it humbles you. You realize that no one is too strong to fall, too wise to make mistakes, or too perfect to hurt. Pain has a way of leveling us, reminding us that we are all human, fragile, flawed, and yet full of potential. Humility softens the soul. It replaces arrogance with empathy. The person who once thought they had to be invincible learns to say, I need help. And in that vulnerability lies real strength. Humility also changes how we see others. It teaches us to stop judging, to stop comparing, and to start understanding. You begin to see that everyone is carrying something, a hidden struggle, an invisible wound. The healed person becomes gentle with others, not because they are weak, but because they remember what pain feels like. They no longer seek to prove their worth through superiority. They lead through sincerity. That humility becomes their quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be felt. And as healing deepens, another gift begins to blossom: gratitude. When you've walked through pain, every moment of peace feels sacred. When you've known emptiness, every small joy feels full. Healing opens your eyes to the beauty in the simple: a sunrise, a smile, a deep breath. Gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it transforms your relationship with it. It allows you to see that even the hardest seasons had purpose, that even heartbreak taught you something you couldn't have learned any other way. Gratitude becomes the lens through which you view life, not focusing on what's missing, but cherishing what remains. It grounds you, it softens you, and it gives meaning to your journey. People are drawn to those who live with gratitude because it radiates peace. That peace becomes influence, not through authority or words, but through presence. The healed and healing soul learns that true influence doesn't come from commanding attention, but from embodying peace, patience, humility, and gratitude together form the foundation of that quiet influence. They make you the kind of person who leads not because you demand followers, but because your energy, your calm, and your authenticity inspire others to rise. Healing, then, is more than recovery. It's a classroom for the soul. And those who learn patience, humility, and gratitude from their pain become the kind of leaders this world needs: peaceful, grounded, and full of grace. When a woman begins to heal, something profound shifts within her. She no longer feels the need to prove her worth by outshining others. Before healing, insecurity often disguises itself as competition. She may compare her journey, her achievements, or her beauty to others, believing that her light shines only if someone else's dims. But healing dissolves that illusion. It teaches her that the success of another woman doesn't diminish her own. It simply adds more light to the world. Healing brings self-awareness, and with it comes confidence rooted in peace, not pride. She realizes that her value is not determined by how she ranks against others, but by how true she is to herself. She no longer competes for attention, validation, or approval. Instead, she celebrates others genuinely because she knows that another person's victory does not mean her defeat. Her healed heart whispers, there is enough space for all of us to rise. And that realization changes everything. When she stops competing, she begins uplifting, and that's where her power multiplies. Her words become softer yet stronger. Her actions become intentional, not reactive. She lifts others because she remembers what it felt like to be unseen, unheard, and uncertain. Healing gives her empathy, the ability to understand another's struggle without judgment. She encourages, mentors, and supports others, not out of obligation, but from a place of abundance. She knows that true success is not standing alone at the top. It's reaching back and pulling others up with her. A healed woman doesn't need to tear others down to feel tall. She stands firm in her identity, grounded in self-love. That love allows her to build communities instead of competition, connections instead of comparisons. She learns that cooperation is more powerful than rivalry, that the energy once wasted on jealousy can be transformed into creativity, kindness, and collaboration. The more she uplifts, the more she rises herself, because giving light doesn't take yours away, it strengthens it. In a world that constantly teaches women to compare looks, lifestyles, followers, and careers, a healed woman becomes a quiet revolution. She refuses to participate in that race. She focuses on her growth, her peace, and her purpose. Her success becomes an offering, not a trophy. She shares what she's learned, supports those behind her, and celebrates those ahead of her. Her healed heart knows that joy multiplies when shared, and when she leads from that space, she transforms the environment around her. She becomes the kind of woman who others feel safe around, the one whose presence doesn't trigger insecurity, but inspires confidence. She listens, guides, and reminds others that they too are capable of greatness. Her strength is no longer measured by how far she can go alone, but by how many people she can lift along the way. A healed woman radiates a different kind of success, one rooted in purpose, compassion, and community. She understands that legacy isn't about how much she achieves for herself, but about how much she contributes to others. Her journey from competition to collaboration becomes a living lesson that when women choose to uplift instead of compete, they don't just change their own lives, they change the world around them. Healing, therefore, doesn't just free her from her past, it frees her from comparison. And in that freedom, she discovers her truest power, the power to uplift, empower, and inspire others to rise alongside her. When a person leads from a healed heart, their motivation shifts completely. They no longer chase leadership for recognition, applause, or control. They lead to make a difference. Their goal is not to stand above others, but to stand with them. True leadership is never about the spotlight. It's about service. It's about lifting others higher, guiding them toward growth, and creating spaces where people feel valued and seen. Healing teaches this truth deeply. Because only someone who has known pain can truly understand the value of compassion. Before healing, many people lead with ego without even realizing it. They want to be admired, respected, or followed because it fills a void within them. They seek validation from status and titles, mistaking power for purpose. But when healing happens, that void begins to close. They no longer need external praise to feel worthy because they found peace within. They realize that leadership is not about how many people follow you. It's about how many lives you impact positively. A healed leader leads differently. Their decisions come from love, not pride. They don't lead to prove themselves, they lead to improve others. They are not driven by competition or the desire to be the best. They are driven by compassion and the need to bring out the best in others. Their leadership is not about control, but about contribution. They don't focus on building an empire, they focus on building people. Leading with purpose means understanding that every position of influence is a platform for service. The healed person knows this. They remember what it was like to be broken, overlooked, or discouraged. That memory becomes their motivation. They use their story not to elevate their ego, but to empower others. They show others that success isn't measured by how high you climb, but by how many hands you reach back to pull upward. Such leadership creates trust. People naturally follow a leader who listens, who values their ideas, and who respects their journey. A healed leader doesn't see others as threats or tools. They see them as teammates. They don't need to dominate conversations. They make space for voices that aren't always heard. Their humility doesn't weaken their authority. It strengthens it. Because the power that comes from peace is more enduring than the power that comes from pride. When you serve with purpose, every challenge becomes meaningful. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this? How can I use this to help others?" Purpose-driven leadership turns pain into mentorship, mistakes into lessons, and struggles into stories that guide others. It transforms workplaces, families, and communities because people feel led, not managed, inspired, not intimidated. Leading with purpose also requires courage. The courage to put people above profit, character above comfort, and integrity above influence. A healed leader understands that true success is not about building wealth or fame. It's about building people who will carry the vision forward. They are not afraid to admit mistakes or ask for help because they know vulnerability is not weakness, it's authenticity. In the end, leadership that comes after healing becomes a sacred act of service. It's a quiet but powerful form of influence that doesn't shout for attention. It earns respect through action. The healed leader leaves behind not just achievements, but a legacy of kindness, wisdom, and purpose. Proof that the greatest leaders are those who choose to serve rather than rule.